Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. The media attacks on St John Paul II continue unabated. The Pope is accused of covering up paedophilia in the church. The same passed a resolution stating that the TVN24 report, Franciscan III, is an attempt to discredit John Paul II with materials that not even the communists dared to use. The resolution of the Law and Justice Party in defence of St John Paul II was accompanied by excerpts from a draft prepared by the PSL. Earlier in the session of the Parliamentary Committee on Culture and Mass Media, both drafts were discussed. This attack on St John Paul II has two features. It is an attack that is extremely aggressive and extremely deceitful at the same time. Two features that are very common in the technologies of modern manipulation, unfortunately. The discussion goes beyond just reportage or discussion of reportage. It is already about the entire legacy of St John Paul II. My club will not participate in the work on these drafts, which is why I have mentioned with regret Mr. Kosiniak Kamish, we will not be submitting amendments. A statement of the claims contained in the TVN24 report was issued by the chairman of the Polish Bishops' Conference, Archbishop Stanisław Gondecki, Metropolitan of Poznan. Defending the sanctity and greatness of John Paul II does not mean, of course, claiming that he could not make mistakes. Being the shepherd of the Church at a time of the division of Europe into West and the Soviet bloc meant having to face daunting challenges. One should also be aware that at the time, not only in Poland, laws were very different from today. Social consciousness and customary ways of solving problems were different. On Monday, TVN aired a report in which the authors, citing accounts of priests who collaborated with the communist security police, claimed that Karol Wojtyla, while still as Metropolitan of Kraków, had covered up paedophilia among the clergy. The video showed a priest who engaged in paedophilic activities, whom Cardinal Wojtyla, as Archbishop of Kraków, transferred to another diocese. He handed him over, as it were, to the bishop of that priest, who was incardinated, that is, belonged to the diocese of Lubachów, and according to the Code of Canon Law, only his bishop can inflict punishment on such a priest. In addition, a book by Dutch journalist Eck Overbeek entitled Maxima Culpa, John Paul II Knew. The book duplicates the claims made in the TVN report. The author wrote the book Fear in 2013, in which the victims of paedophilia priests spoke out. Among them was Marek Lisinski, who claimed to be a victim of a paedophile priest, but years later turned out to be a fraud. This is a man who has already shown repeatedly that he is incapable of studying documents. He does not know how to deal with them. He does not have the tools of a historian. He does not have the basic elementary knowledge that ensures such honest scientific research. And a fundamental thing, all these books, reports, articles are written with a view, a preconceived view. This is not the first attempt to discredit the Pope. In 1983, the Security Service planted prepared materials in the apartment of Father Andrzej Bardecki, a friend of the Pope, to prove an alleged affair between Karol Wojtyla and Irena Kinaszewska. The whole plot backfired for various reasons, but the principle was exactly the same: plant-crafted, unreliable, hypocritical materials in order to strip the authority and credibility of the figure of Karol Wojtyla, John Paul II. Today we are dealing with the same thing. The TVN-TV report has become fuel for extreme circles that accuse St. John Paul II of literally everything. The fact that a Pole is poor, the fact that a Pole has to emigrate, the fact that a Pole has no freedom of speech, the fact that a Pole has no freedom of religion, the fact that all over the place is the Church, pushing its paws into every area of life. This is the aftermath of the myth of John Paul II. It's simply not even about madness anymore, and it's not about figuring out how it was. It's a bit like Father Riddick's Maybach. Everyone knows it was a Linden, but somehow it's not a problem for anyone to repeat it. The TVN television report also made accusations against Cardinal Adam Sapieha. The authors, using the testimony of two priests, one of whom was an agent of the communist security forces, accused the clergyman of molesting seminarians. Even the security office did not treat this testimony credibly and never used it. Warsaw's secretary, chairman of the city's MPO company and former Treasury Minister in the PO government, Władimir Karpiński, who has been arrested and suspended from office, still draws half his salary, or nearly 10,000 zloty per month. Karpiński had charges of accepting a bribe in connection with the procedure for selecting waste disposal companies. Warsaw Secretary Władimir Karpiński was paid a gross salary of 19,152 zloty. In connection with his detention, the capital city hall cut his salary in half. In doing so, it cited the law on local government employees and said that it was complying with all the provisions of the law. During the period of suspension, a local government employee shall be paid half of the salary to which he or she is entitled up to the date of temporary arrest.
W przypadku pracowników samorządowych,
In the case of local government employees, we apply Article 35 of this law, which deals with local government employees. And this article states that these local government employees and their employment relationship is suspended in law in the case of temporary arrest, but they receive half of the salary to which they would normally receive. And this is unquestionable. This is what is written in the law.
wynagrodzenia tego, którego normalnie otrzymują. I to
Civic Platform said that according to the principle of presumption of innocence, only the court will decide his guilt or clear him of the charges. Guilt in Poland is decided by the courts, and Mr. Władimir Karpiński has not been convicted. He has been detained for the time being. His defense attorneys have filed a complaint. As a result, he is receiving half of the salary to which he is entitled. However, the issue of Karpiński receiving 9,500 zloty in salary raises concerns, as investigators accuse him of accepting financial benefits in the amount of 5 million zloty. The prosecutor of the Silesian branch of the Department for Organised Crime and Corruption in the National Prosecutor's Office in Katowice presented Władimir K. with a corruption charge committed jointly and in agreement with other persons, including Rafał B., consisting of demanding from the president of one of the companies a material benefit in the amount of 2.5% of the value of public contracts obtained from the municipal cleaning company in the city of Warsaw, in exchange for changing the specifications of essential terms of public procurement. The value of the rigged orders amounted to nearly 600 million zloty. The corrupt acts allegedly took place from April 2020 to December 2022, while Władimir Karpiński served as chairman of the board of directors of the municipal cleaning enterprise in the capital city of Warsaw, and then as secretary of the city. On Friday, at the request of Law and Justice Party councillors, an extraordinary session of the Warsaw Council was convened in connection with Karpiński's detention by the Central Anti-Corruption Bureau. We requested the dismissal of the secretary, then his salary would not be paid. As part of this investigation, Rafał Baniak, among others, was detained in early February. The former Deputy Treasury Minister in Donald Tusk's government does not admit guilt. He heard charges of leading an organised criminal group and invoking influence. He was alleged to have rigged contracts for rubbish collection worth 600 million zloty. Well, these are huge sums, very significant names of people associated with the Civic Platform Party, because after all, Władimir Karpiński, here it should be made clear, as Secretary of Warsaw, had to leave the Civic Platform Party. He is not formally a member of the Civic Platform because the regulations do not allow it. Secretary of Warsaw, this is an official position where, according to regulations, a politician cannot sit in such a position. But of course, this is just a formality. It is known that Władimir Karpiński is a person with very strong ties to the Civic Platform Party, and this is a man who belongs to Donald Tusk's most trusted circle. The high prices for waste management in Warsaw are no surprise. For years there have been problems with collections. Some neighbourhoods have problems with rat infestation. Warsaw is an expensive place when it comes to waste management. This is of course a fact. Perhaps it would be forgivable if these prices for rubbish collection were followed by a high-quality service for residents. This is not the case at all. I can say as much that in the schedules, for example, my property has rubbish collection twice a week, and for many months this rubbish has been taken once a week, and this creates an epidemiological threat. The first detentions in this case occurred on January the 10th, 2023. 7 people were detained. In the course of their interrogations, investigators confirmed early suspicions that the detainees revealed more people involved in the criminal enterprise. To date, 14 people have been detained in this case. Temporary detention has been applied to some for fear of the risk of their obstructing the investigation. It was a restless night in Ukraine. The Russians launched a massive missile attack on a number of cities. Missiles fell on towns and cities including Kiev, Kharkiv and Zlochev, which lies 140 kilometers from the Polish border. As a result of the attacks, there were power outages in many places. Our special correspondent, Witold Nowelic, is in the town of Tver Yar, near Bakhmut.
Dzisiejszej nocy Rosjanie dokonali najbardziej zmasowanego ataku rakietowego na Ukrainę.
Tonight, the Russians launched their most massive missile attack on Ukraine. The target, as before, was critical infrastructure, but Russian missiles also exploded in civilian-populated areas in the city of Kherson itself. The attack began around 3 a.m. when the first explosions were reported in Kharkov and, among other areas, in Khmelnytsk and Mykolaiv. Residents of Mykolaiv were awakened by explosions at the capital's thermal power plant. Another wave of airstrikes covered most of Ukraine, with missiles of various types coming from the Black and Caspian Seas. Some of the missiles flew over Moldovan territory. The Russians used 81 missiles, including 8 of the Kinjal-type missiles, which have tremendous firepower. Ukrainian anti-aircraft defenses managed to neutralize only 34. The others reached their targets, including the external power grid of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Deprived of power to the cooling pumps, the reactors at this plant threatened disaster on an unimaginable scale, but recent announcements indicate that the situation is slowly being brought under control. On the front, the fiercest fighting is taking place in Bakhmut, a few kilometers away. The command of the central section of the front reported multiple attempts to overrun Ukrainian defensive lines. Positions on the line of the Bakhmut River are still being held. The aggressors, in the course of each successive attack, suffer heavy losses. Ukrainian services across the country have begun clearing up the attacks, and by the end of the day, power supplies are expected to be restored across Ukraine.
Na linii rzeki Bachmuckie.
That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.